I mean, what patterns have you consistently seen across, successful ERP projects, regardless of the company size?
Yeah, great question. So there's some commonality between companies of all sizes, right? So there's at some point, there's a determination that they have issues with their current system. Companies can prematurely decide, oh, we need a new system, or prematurely decide, oh no, we don't need a new system. Let's just fix what's broken with ours without going through the proper process. So the four stages really are identifying those gaps, those requirements that are left untended to. And so I guess generically in the industry, we call that requirements gathering, okay, which is a very simple term, but it means a lot more than that. So for those companies that really truly do need a new system, because there's the current one's just gonna not cut it. It's some sort of a really old structure. The database is broken, or the software itself is not supported anymore. There's a wide variety of reasons. So if they're gonna do that, they go through the system selection, right? And then they interview various companies and all that with the documentation of the requirements. And then once they selected the proper system, then you do the implementation, and then after that, you're never done. So you're doing constant optimization waves, right? So I long-winded answer, but it's to say there's no difference for a 25 million or $50 million company who needs to go through those life cycles, or a $10 billion company who need to go through those cycles, which means the commonality between those phases for the company results in commonalities for mistakes and challenges within those phases.
So it sounds like there's the same fundamentals, but obviously different experiences for the businesses that face them. I mean, one of the big themes I know we've been speaking about previously is that difference between the SMEs and Fortune 500 organizations. What are the biggest sort of operational and strategic differences when smaller companies approach ERP?
Right. Absolutely. So first of all, you have the obvious one, which is resources, right? I mean, I remember in around that 2004, 2005 timeframe, this is when I was working for SAP in the consulting group, and we had projects that had in excess of 50 project managers. And so for these giant conglomerates, if they needed more resources, they could just tap into a pool, bring more resources in. Lots of people that were full-time dedicated to those projects. So they have that wealth and capacity. Smaller companies obviously don't have that. In fact, it's most common for a small company to take an existing person who may or may not have ERP experience and then designate them the internal PM. And perhaps they might have an external PM support them, but even that external PM probably has 8 or 10 other clients. If the client's lucky, maybe only 3 or 4, but no one's dedicated to that specific project, is what I'm saying. And going back to those global 1000 type firms, the wealth of resources isn't just internal. They can just turn on the tap for external resources too, right? And if they have an SI, an implementation partner, then they can say, we need more bodies to do this. We need more project management resources. We need more integration experts or what have you. So big difference in those resources and the availability and the affordability. Now, there are other differences too, and that has to do with methodologies. The big companies have very fancy dashboards. They have a giant racy matrix. And, they have dashboards upon dashboards to measure, to gauge, to track the project, right? Smaller companies typically have maybe 1 or 2 dashboards that they're looking at. And so they're really relying on that single dashboard to be reflective of all the various elements of the ERP project. So there's just a couple of differences between the two.